Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the History Center. Thank you for braving the nice, cozy weather to be with us tonight. We are very happy to have you here. My name is Madeline Lawler. I am the new education coordinator here. And as my boss would be very disappointed if I did not plug our memberships, this could be free if you're a member. So if you're interested, find me after. But in the meantime, before I reveal too many details about our guest speakers, I would like to welcome the artist and architect duo behind Swash Blossom Farm, Susan and Roger. Please join me in welcoming them.
Can you hear me okay? Well, I thank you all for coming. I'm really honored that you would come out tonight and listen to the story about our farm. And I'm going to try and stay kind of on track and not go too divergent, but that's my nature, so I'll get you out of here before too long. This is a really exciting day. My book came night before last at 7 p.m. And it was really a big deal. The last 3 weeks, there was one issue after another, and they didn't get approved to me. And then when they sent it out overnight delivery, it didn't go till the next week. And then it accidentally went, instead of to me, it went to somewhere in Iowa. And then it came, and I had to tell them, like, before I had a chance to look at the proofs, print it. So there's a couple of little mistakes in there. But those are just little secrets you have to find. Sorry about that. If I ever have to make it again, it'll be perfect next time. But that just makes it human. So, before I go into the whole story, I'm going to do my thank yous to CMAC, the Southeast Minnesota Arts Council, who a year ago gave me an artist grant, which really got me to focus on doing this project. I had a deadline. I've been thinking of having a deadline, and this activity through a grant appropriation from the Arts and Heritage Fund. I want to thank them, and I want to thank the Old History Center for allowing me to do a capstone event. Beautiful spot. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about Roger and me. Roger Nelson, right here, is my husband and partner in life, and we've known each other since second grade. We didn't really plan to get married back then, but it just we just stayed friends all of our lives. And back when we were in high school, we would go cross country skiing together. We lived in Bemidji. We'd go night skiing. It's really cold up there then, along the lake, 20 below. And then we would go have hot chocolate at Renat's Pizza afterwards, and we would talk about philosophical things. And a lot of what we talked about was a utopian community where it was a farm and you grew your own food, and it was all about art and music and community. And that's one of the things I loved about Raj, probably why we connected, because we had this similar idea about what would be a perfect life. And our whole lives, we ended up getting married and living together for the last 40 years. And our whole lives, we have been looking for a farm, and I just really didn't think it was ever going to happen, because we had careers and kids and things went in different directions. But it did happen, and now it's crazy. We're actually living that dream we talked about when we were like 17, and making it happen now. And it's just, I guess it's never too late. It's very cool. So Raj has been working since since our kids were babies as an architect, and I'm an artist, and I've worked in community building and renewable energy stuff, recycling and waste reduction and environmental stuff for our whole adult lives. And then 15 years ago, I sort of had my midlife crisis, like turning 50, I'm never gonna be a farmer. And I was really depressed. I was in a really low point at a job. I was really burnt out and thinking, kind of how I was getting old and tired out. And I had some health issues going on and Raj said, soon, let's just do it. Let's get serious and find a farm. And it took a year to find this farm. And then it took a year after we found it to actually buy it because it was $1,000 out of our price range. But it just happened. We just kind of willed it to happen, I guess. It happened. It was meant to be. So we have been working our real jobs alongside of this farm. But and I ended up after about year 5 calling Raj one day and saying, Raj, I just gave notice to my work because my heart isn't in it anymore. I just want to work on the farm. And he's like, how are we going to do this? And then poor Raj has had to work out his real job as an architect until this last spring he retired, although he's still doing it a little bit. Anyway, so that's our background. The minute that we found this farm and they accepted our offer on it, we decided we had to come up with a name. And I'm really a word person, so I sat down and wrote probably 50 farm names, Greenhorn Farm, and Tenderfoot Farm, and I had a long list. And then we had a family meeting, and we decided, we voted, and this was the one that we unanimously agreed upon: Squash Blossom Farm. I liked it because it was vegetable and it's just a beautiful image. And also now our streams are either going to be squashed or blossom. Raj and I had talked a lot about, we just like the idea of local, focusing on what's in your own community and what's local, what you do by your own hand. So we had the idea that it would be all about local food, local art, local music. I'm going to tell you, since this is the History Center, I really want to tell you a little bit of the history of our farm. It's well over 100 years old. The abstract goes back to the 1870s, I think. But I really think of it as starting in 1910 when the Hetzel family bought it, because they built all the buildings on our farm. And all of them are still there. The barn, the loafing shed, the coop, the house, the granary. Those were all built around 1910 to 1915 by the Hetzels. And they're awesome buildings. They're in good shape. We've been working on them and keeping them in good shape and restoring them. But like that house, the foundation is like limestone this thick. It's crazy. It's really sturdy. And the Hetzel family is one of the most tragic stories of Waughtal County. They came from gosh, I'm thinking of this. I think they were from Macedonia, Poland, I can't remember. But they settled first in Wisconsin and then moved by ox cart to this Rochester area and lived and farmed by Salem Corners. And the dad of the family was killed in the big cyclone that killed a lot of people and was the genesis of the Mayo Clinic. So a couple years after the dad was killed, the son wanted to be closer to the relatives that lived over in Kalmar Township, which is our township. And so he found a farm for sale and bought the land and settled there. So in 1910, they started building all of this stuff. And he had a wife and 2 boys and a daughter. And he got really sick. I think he had cancer and he died in 1913 in February. Around the same time, the wife's nephew who lived in Zambroda was in some kind of trouble and we haven't been able to find out what it was, but he got in trouble. And so she offered to take him in to give him a fresh start. And he was living with the family and probably working like a farmhand. I think he was 18. And one day the older brother of the family was farming next door and the daughter was married, but the young 14-year-old son, Leo, was still home. He took a revolver and hit Leo over the head and knocked him out, tied him up in the barn, and then went and shot his aunt, the mom, and killed her that she was hauling water from it must have been from the window to the house. They were right next door. And then he went out and told his cousin Leo, the train used to stop in Douglas, which is just down the hill from us. He said, I'm taking the train to Chicago. Tell them I did it. They'll never catch me. So then he left, and Leo found out his mother had been killed. And he was able to get loose by his feet, but not his hands. But he was able to run to the neighbors and get help. And they went to his brother's farm, and the cousin was there to kill his brother, and they were able to apprehend him. And so I haven't been able to find any stories about whether they ultimately put him in jail. It was kind of a toss up with the jury whether he was crazy or not. But anyway, so that all happened in a 2-month period, and those two brothers had to take over the farm, and they did farm it for a while and even did some improvements, because our barn has a cupola on it with the date 1914 embossed in the cupola. But I think it was really tough for them, probably emotionally as well as making a go of it. And ultimately, Leo joined the Navy, and the whole family moved to California. They just had a lot of bad memories here, I guess. But anyway, so that's a really tragic story. It was called the most notorious murder in Olmsted County at the time. And everyone always asks if we have ghosts, then we might, but if they are there, they're really friendly. So we've never had a spooky ghost. Our farm too, I'm going to mention this because it's not in my slideshow here, but in the book there's an image of a map that shows our farm is geologically on this really interesting area. It's the last ice age, the last glacial sheet that came over Minnesota stopped just like 10 miles west of us by Genoa. And there used to be a huge river valley that our farm was on the hill above. And it's called the Buried River now. When that glacier melted, it all got filled in by glacial moraine. Oops, I must not be going fast enough. Anyway, it's really interesting. And we have some giant glacial erratic rocks in our pasture prairie that were left from that glacier. From the glacier before, actually, they came from a different glacier from the Canadian Shield, but because the glacier didn't come and actually the next glacier didn't scrape them away, they're still up there. So it's really very interesting. So these are the buildings that were in our farm when we moved here: the garage, the granary, the barn, loafing shed, chicken coop, windmill, and air motor windmill. We have 10 acres of what was once 100-acre. Oh, sorry. Can you hear now?
Yeah.
Oh.
We missed about half everything.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I will try and talk a lot closer. Just raise your hand if you can't hear. The farm is we have 10 acres of what was once a 100-acre farm. And it has about 5 acres that's kind of settled, and then 5 acres that's woods and pasture. These are quick shots of the buildings. On your left is the barn as when we moved here, and on the right is the barn how it is last fall. We've added a lot of things to the barn. On the left side, which is the south, is our mead tasting room. The middle windows are our commercial kitchen. The right-hand doors go into the baking room, and then there's a restroom, and then it goes on back to the chocolate and mead making area. And then the back half of the barn is still barn with hay and storage and tools. We don't keep animals in there anymore, except right now a few geese. The house, which I really love, it's kind of a transition between farmhouses of 1910 and the next era of mission style. And then the building on the right was the granary, which is now my studio. It's had a lot of life as a store and a place where people have lived, and it's a really sweet building. I'm really lucky to have that. The left side is the farmyard. Kind of, you see the barn, and then behind the tree is the loafing shed, and then the chicken coop. This right side building is the inside of the loafing shed looking in at night. It used to be the pig barn, and there were little pig doors all along both sides, like 6 of them. And the last owners had horses, and they turned it into a loafing shed and opened it up so the animals can just come in for shelter. So when we moved to the farm, we knew we were kind of old to start out as farmers, but we just wanted the farm experience, and we kind of thought we would be like hobby farmers, and we were going to have chickens, and bees and a garden. That was kind of the extent of what I dreamed of anyway. That would make me happy. So the first year there for Christmas, we moved in September. For Christmas, Raj and the kids got me chicken paraphernalia and a certificate for chicken. So I was able to start out with chicken. And I got bees that spring, one hive. And our garden didn't look this good yet, but we started gardening really intensively. Our two daughters had both moved home from college. They took some time off and said, we're going to help you launch the farm. And, you know, I would have loved to have raised my kids on a farm. That would have been so cool, but it didn't happen. But in retrospect, it was probably better because, you know, a lot of kids who get raised on farms can't wait to leave the farm. Our kids could now wait to come to the farm and help us work on it. And they're really smart and really capable, and they have this entrepreneurial streak. So they both had all these ideas how they were going to raise money for college on our farm. So Cadence, the one in the wheelbarrow holding the geese, she decided she was going to raise 400 meat chickens, 15 turkeys, 2 steers, and she got some bottle-fed steers. We ordered the chickens in a couple batches and then the turkeys. Sarah was really heavily into baking. She's the one who really urged us to start baking for the farmers market, and she got 2 pigs. And what's kind of curious about this is that our daughters were vegetarians, and now they're raising meat animals. But they really felt like if animals are raised in a really humane way, and you know what they've been eating, how the life they've lived, then it's okay for them to live with that purpose. And so, but now they're meat eaters, but they're very persnickety. They're meat. The picture on the right is our neighbors across the way had dairy cattle, and if a cow has to have an antibiotic or something because it's had an infection or whatever, mastitis, they can't use the milk for weeks afterwards. So we would get some waste milk for the pigs sometimes from them. So they would actually carry those heavy buckets of milk for like a quarter of a mile together. And then Cadence had this great idea. She found this ad for a milk cow, a family milk cow that was up in the north of the cities. And she said, Mom, we have to go look at this milk cow. Look, we could make our own cheese. We could make ice cream. We can use it in baking. So, you know, I love cows. I mean, I'd never really been up close to a cow, except when I was a little kid. My grandparents had a cow and I rode on one once, but I was kind of afraid of them, but I love them. They're my favorite animal. And I said, yeah, let's go look at it. And we got there and just fell in love with it. She was such a gentle cow. She's so pretty. She's the spotted one. She's half Jersey and half mystery. So we called her an Appaloosa cow. And her name was LaFonda. And she, like, when we went to meet her, the little 4-year-old could just like walk up to her and milk her standing there without being tied up or anything. She was just so gentle and into, you know, willing to be milked. So she was a really good first cow for us. And behind her, on the left side, the brown cow is Lariat, who's a Dexter cow, which was the first cow I got because they're a heritage Irish breed that are small, very hardy, very gentle. I got a non-horned one. And so I thought that would be a good starting cow because they're not very big. We first went to the neighbors who had the dairy cows, and we're gonna ask them about getting some of their bull calves to raise. And then we saw how ginormous their Holstein cows were, and we're like, maybe not. They're really huge, pretty intimidating. And then the little calf on the right was Lariat's calf. And the black cow in the back was her first calf from a year earlier. It was pretty cool. Here's more cow pictures. To me, the cows were like the very ultimate part of being a farmer that, you know, I never, if I thought, what would it be like to be a farmer, I would think of having a cow and, you know, getting hay, stacking hay and cleaning up the stalls and the cow manure and the smell of the cow poop and keeping them in the fence and finding them when they got out. And we even learned, you know, how to tell when it was the right time to do the artificial insemination and calcify and order the semen online. And I mean, I just felt like such a farmer, and we were successful doing all that. And I love the cows. They're just my favorite. The one on the bottom left is a Scottish Highland cow, the furry one. And when LaFonda died, she was probably pretty old when we got her. We don't really know, but that was the most tragic day in my farming career. When she wasn't able to get up and we had to put her down. But we got Courgette as a calf to kind of take her place. I'm going to diverge a little bit and go to the present. This isn't in chronological order, but now we have goats. We had to get rid of the cows because the county paved the road and doesn't allow parking along it anymore. So the pasture has to be parking for our events. So it turned out to be a pretty good timing because I'm getting kind of arthritic and cows are really heavy work to do. So goats are a lot easier, make a lot smaller poops. And they're really fun. They're kind of annoying, but they're really fun. And donkeys, we have 2 donkeys. This is Donkey Quixote, and then we have a new female Jenny donkey that may have a foal this summer. Her name is they're the sweetest. We also have in the old silo foundation, the silo of the barn burned down maybe in the 1920s or blew down. We've heard different stories. And it never was rebuilt. So when we moved to the farm, there was a giant old dying silver maple in there that needed to come down. And then when we put solar panels on the roof, it had to really come down because it would shade them. So we had this big silo foundation, 12-foot diameter circle concrete, and decided we would make a pond in there. And then around that time, I started learning about aquaponics growing. It's like hydroponic growing in water, except that in hydroponic growing, you add nutrients for the plants and have a system that way. In aquaponic growing, you have fish, and the fish waste is creating the nutrients for it. So it's a little ecosystem. And so it's really fun and it's really beautiful and pleasant, but it's not a lot of work, and it's not, on the scale we're doing it, it's not very financially feasible to do it for cost effectively, but we can't not do it because we have these great fish and it's so pretty and it's a good place to go and have a glass of wine and dangle your feet in there and after a long hard day.
Do they survive the winter?
Yes, we've had these same fish for 11 or 12 years now.
Wow.
And inside there's these goldfish and koi that you can see. And then there are also about 35 channel catfish, like live in the Mississippi River, which we have to get a fishery license to have those. But we got those as fry, 3/4 of an inch long, and now they're up to 2 feet long. And they've been in there all that time. They haven't ever come out. But last week they went into some tubs while we cleaned up the pond for a few hours. So with all those enterprises we had with the chickens, the garden, the eggs, the beef, the pork, the honey, we had to do something with it. And it was way more than we as a family could eat. So we started using a lot of it in our baking and selling some of it at the farmers market and taking orders online, like selling quarter beef and half pigs. And anyway, so that's kind of how we got involved with start really getting serious about the farmers market and baking. If you've come to the farmers market and seen our booth, we do a lot of pastries and breads. That's kind of what we focus on now. And we fired sourdough bread. So way back, Roger and I went to college in different colleges, and he went out to California to Stanford, and I stayed in Minnesota. And he took a semester in France, and he would write me these letters, like, I would call them love letters. They were on airgrams, those little thin blue papers that you pulled up before there was email or cell phones. And but they were all love letters to French bread. Like he read a whole airgram about going to this bakery and buying the French bread, walking home and taking little pieces off of it and nibbling it, and it'd be all gone before you got home, and then you had to go buy another one. And so it's very cool that now in our old age, he's making the bread that he loved so much back then. It's really cool. Back when our kids were young, we took them to college, and we discovered these things, these places that were pizza farms. or wood fire pizza. We had never had that before. First found that in Maine and when we visited our daughter, and then we started going to the pizza farms in Wisconsin. We drive an hour to get there, and then, well, that was from Dakota. It's probably 2 hours from here, and then wait an hour for your pizza, and then eat it, and then drive home. And oh, it needs to be a pizza farm near Rochester. And if we ever have a farm, we should have a pizza farm. So that was one of the things we thought of when we found this farm, is like, this would be a perfect pizza farm. It's so close to Rochester and the bike trail. But the limiting factor is that you have to have a commercial kitchen to do that. And a commercial kitchen is extraordinarily expensive, especially when you're building it in a barn. So we just like dreamed about it and vacillated about, should we try to do it or not, for like 8 years, about 8 years. And finally, we just decided that, if we had a commercial kitchen, we could make food for our weddings that happened at the farm and put in a real bathroom rather than porta potties. And we could bake for our bread for the co-op. And there was a lot of reasons to go for it. But it was still a huge expense. So we decided to do a Kickstarter. We did a Kickstarter and raised $25,000. And our thought was, if you raise the money, if that's your goal, you get to have the money for your project, but it's not, nobody pays. Like, well, that will just demonstrate that there's support and that everyone wants us to do this and that it's meant to be. And it happened. We raised the money and we built this kitchen ourselves. It took us over a year. Everything in it is pretty much from the Restore, Craigslist, or want ads, or donated to us, like that big stove in the back. One of our farmers market customers gave it to us. They were remodeling their kitchen. It's really lovely. It cost a fortune to move it, but it's really a fun stove to work on. All the tile came from the Restore. One of our interns and I tiled that huge kitchen together in that checkerboard pattern. So it's the kitchen that the Restore built essentially. And it's really wonderful because Raj had designed a lot of kitchens for his architecture career. And so he knew how to do it. There's a lot of things you have to do for a commercial kitchen for the regulations, but we wanted to make sure we had windows that opened, and it's just a lovely place to work. And we've had chefs come and visit. So this is the greatest kitchen. I would love to work here. It's got a view. A lot of kitchens are in like basements or alleys, backs of buildings. So here's Raj in the new kitchen. We had built a really beautiful mosaic oven. It was called the Mike Podolsky Memorial Oven because it used a lot of little parts that Mike Podolsky had collected over his lifetime from mosaics and his family, and we mosaicked it. It was very beautiful, but it was not allowed to be used for a commercial kitchen. So we had to get this really ugly NSF, National Safety Foundation, I don't know, some certification that commercial equipment has to be. It came from a Mankato pizza place that had closed, and it was a really ugly stainless steel. So we mosaicked around it to make it pretty. And it's really sweet oven that can do about 30 loaves of bread at a time. Or 6 pizzas in there. And there's some pizzas in the works. So we were able to start doing our pizza farm. And I'm now in summer Sundays from Memorial Day through September. We have pizza and music every Sunday night. And it's virtually always sold out unless the weather's bad, then we have to cancel it. But it usually sells out about a week ahead. And we make about 80 pizzas. And we might have upped that a little bit this year in 2 hours. And they're all made with our own homemade sourdough bread, homemade marinara sauce, a lot of veggies and herbs from the garden and local vendors. And it's really fun and it's really good. A couple, like, I don't know, 4 years ago, our older daughter, Sarah, she's a botanist, and she started going to Costa Rica in the winter and working with indigenous brie farmers in Costa Rica, and working on learning from them about growing cacao for making chocolate and learning how to make chocolate. And she had this idea she'd come back and do that in Minneapolis where she lived, but it was just too hard to do, and her cottage business it's a lot of equipment. And she said, Mom and Dad, you guys should do this. So that's Suzette. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. So no, not that one. So she came home and she taught us how to make chocolate, and we connected up with the Bree growers there in Costa Rica. In that Bree tribe, the chocolate is part of their religious culture. There are 3 goddesses that are all the 3 chocolates that they grow, and it's it's very spiritual. And so we're trying to make sure we do it in a very respectful way. But we've talked with them on conference calls and Zoom calls, and they're all okay with us selling their chocolate, and they want to have an outlet for it. Because right now the government just buys it at nothing, and it gets mixed in with all the beans from all over the world, from Nestle's to Nestle's and Hershey's, and so you always get a uniform taste, but you don't get to taste their beans, which are holy beans. Anyway, so we've been making chocolate for a few years. We're really proud of it. We make several different kinds. It's a lot of work. First, we get the beans in those 100-pound bags shipped to us from Costa Rica, and then roast them in our wood-fired oven, shell them, winnow, grind, melange with the sugar for 24 hours, temper, mold, add all the inclusions, wrap. It's like a several-day process to make a chocolate bar. But it's really, when it's being made, the whole farm smells like chocolate. It's really heavenly. And then our being beekeepers, Raj started making mead, also being a wine drinker. So we started making mead with our honey, and thought I was part of the Southeast Minnesota Beekeepers Association, and often at meetings, beekeepers would say, we need a meadery around here for an outlet for our honey. And we've got that in the back of our mind. Anyway, that was our pandemic project. Raj went through all the rigmarole to get the licensing from the government, state and federal, and we built a mead making room and dedicated chocolate area in our back of our kitchen. And then last winter, not this past winter, but the winter before, we built in the south side of the barn a really beautiful mead tasting room, and we opened it last summer. There's the mead tasting room, and true to our natures, everything is, restore. So or use. The ceiling is made from walk-in cooler panels that we got a truckload of them from a warehouse that was being torn down, and Raj said, I'm going to use these for the ceiling. I said, Raj, those are ugly, but I stenciled them and they look kind of like ceiling, metal tiles now. And then the bar on the windows is a church pew. Hope that isn't sacrilegious. The floors are bowling alleys. The back bar came from the restore. I think it might have been a law office cherry bookshelf or something. It's huge, barely fits in our barn. And then the bar itself we found on Marketplace from a person in Frontenac, a woman from England who wanted a pub in her basement and had an artist build her this bar. And then when she sold her house, the new people had 8 kids and they needed to make it be a bedroom. So she sold the bar. They sold the bar and we got the bar top, and it's just beautiful. So we're really lucky. I hope you come and check it out. It's a really sweet spot. These are a few of our other projects. We always have a few projects going. The upper left is our a greenhouse that we bought used from Craigslist from people named Roger and Sue. And, the little building in the middle is made out of windows, and that's the little glass house, which is just finished last fall, and it doesn't have a lot of use yet, but it's a really magical spot to go, especially I think in the summer when it's raining. It'll just be a sweet spot to go or meditate or read a book. There's our fish pond in the barn silo. In the bottom left is the unbearably cute garden shed that I found on Craigslist as kind of a shell on the day before my birthday in December. And I said, Raj, I want that for my birthday. $50. He said, Sue, it's too little. You can't even stand up in it. He was like short. But I said, it was so cute. I could start full in it. Well, we happened to get a great intern that spring that had the best carpentry skills. And so he made it taller. I said, Chad, could you put a Dutch door in it that opens in two parts, and I'll get a sandwich glass plate, and we'll make the window from that, and he built a little deck. It's just the sweetest fun. So he had fun, and I had really a lot of fun. So throughout our whole farming philosophy, I thought I should share this with you. We're not really strict permaculture farmers, but that's our guiding philosophy. And there are a lot of principles to permaculture. It's a sustainable way of farming. But we're trying to be practical and using the ones that make sense for us. So we like the principle of diversity, and maybe we take that to extremes. A lot of times people say, but what's your focus? Like, I don't need a focus, we do anything. You know, there's strength in diversity. It's resilient. During the pandemic, it really, because we were able to pivot and do a lot of things throughout the pandemic, and it didn't really hurt us as a business because we were able to do a lot of shifting around and focusing in other areas. And I think that was partly because we were diverse and not committed to one way of doing things. Energy efficiency, because that's near and dear to our hearts. And we have solar panels, and we want to expand that. We try and make all our buildings energy efficient as we work on them. We don't use any chemicals. The whole idea of permaculture that I like is that you work in ecosystems. So every part of the farm has multiple purposes. For instance, chickens, they can provide you meat, provide you eggs, but they also help compost the cow manure, and they eat the bugs, and they provide you feathers if you're into feathers for art or pillows or anything like that. Bees pollinate as well as giving you honey, and they give you wax, which I'm going to be using for encaustic painting. So, you know, as an artist, that's another resource that's coming from our farms. That's very cool. Reuse and recycling, conservation, preservation, and restoration. One of our, I don't know, this is probably not a, this is probably a pipe dream, but one of our thoughts is that if we make this farm be really a treasure and invite the community in to love it, maybe that will protect it from being turned into a quick trip someday. Because we're right on the edge of all the development. And then community connection, which that's really important to us too. So I've talked a little bit about the local food part, but here's a little bit about what we do local art. We have festivals and events with artisans and artists coming. We have offered quite a few classes and workshops. We have some more coming up this summer. That was a willow and twig furniture on the bottom, Kasanki Ukrainian Easter eggs, a mandala class on an old record album. That was really fun. We were really known for our cow puja when we had our cows, and we did it every fall for the first 8 years or 9 years. It's an Indian festival, and the Hindu temple would come and help with doing the ceremony part. It's a festival that is not for blessing the cows, but it's thanking them for blessing us. And the cows get decorated, and everyone can give them special treats. And then we would have music and tribal dancers and artists and food, of course. We've also started to do some theatrical performances on our farm. The bottom left is a Queen Bee outdoor science fiction musical that was last. Nature is a play, an amazing play about the life of the friendship of Emerson and Thoreau. And we've been lucky to get a grant to bring them twice because they're really expensive. They're like actors from the Guthrie and Southern Theater, and you know, professional, top-notch actors and music. It's really a beautiful play that is performed in 5 sites throughout the farm. It's really fun, really. And the picnic operetta has come many years. And Squirrels and Company Improv, we would do some improv dinners like squirrel soup, where we would have a soup supper and improv. We've had some other theaters. There's one this fall coming back called Table by Sourdough Theater with a multi-course dinner. It's limited to about 40 people. And it's an interactive dinner theater where all the actors are the restaurant waitresses and managers. And it is hilarious and so much fun. So that's one to watch for. That will be in September. We've started a sculpture garden on the farm and it's got a long ways to go, but on the left is one of my sculptures, a mosaic prairie woman. The middle top is in our greenhouse. It's a mandala window made out of old vintage dishes on a huge 5.5-foot diameter window from the resort. And it weighs about 400 pounds, but I have an architect husband who figured out how to hang it without destroying the
Some strong friends.
and some strong friends who happen to be here who helped raise it that day. Yes, and the bison sculpture is a life-size buffalo that was at Shepherd Buffalo Farm, their fellow farmers market vendors, and when they retired and sold their farm and their herd, Ron put out a message, said, hey, I have a lot of bison little figurines and things, who wants some? And I said, hey, Ron, what are you gonna do with that giant bison? And he said, I don't know, nobody's gonna want that. I said, it would be really nice in our sculpture garden. And he said, well, all the legs are broken off. And I said, well, I'm taking a welding class this weekend. So and I took it to the welding class and we fixed it and it's been standing ever since. So it's really cute. And then the bottom right corner is the Waughtal, which was built by Jane and Michael Donovan 22 or 24 years ago on their honeymoon. It is the most beautiful gypsy wagon, but that's not a proper term yet to call it Waughtal. And it's all hand carved and painted in crazy colors and it's really beautiful. Local music, we have music every weekend and we also sometimes have special concerts, music at our festivals. They play on the barn stage and people sit under the shade and eat their pizza. And listen, it's really fun. Community, oops, I didn't see that glitch. So we don't do weddings too much anymore, but we've done weddings, fundraisers for nonprofits, dinners on the farm, solar tour, anniversary parties, birthday parties, family reunions, a celebration of life once, school tours. So we're open to doing things. We get some tours that come on buses in the fall and we dinner for them. So you might ask, how the heck do two people do all that? Well, we have the best team of interns, volunteers, and staff. So for probably 10 years, we had interns with woofing, willing workers on organic farms who would come from all over the world. We had some from New Zealand and Japan and all over the US and stay with us for varying lengths of time, sometimes a weekend, sometimes a year, or in one case, we had somebody come back for 3 years, once for a whole year, the whole past year. And we pay them, but not very much, but they get room and board with us and get to learn a lot of things. We have incredible staff. We've been so lucky, and I have 2 staff people here, Tracy and Olivia. Olivia baked those candy cookies yesterday. And Tracy's we call her the pizza team, but she's managing a lot of the action going on the metering and the pizza nights. She's invaluable too. And then we've had a lot of friends who stepped up to help us with things like building the greenhouse, that we thought we'd get that up in a weekend, but it took us 2 years. So you get so far and then there would be a windstorm and take out the first panel and you have to take everything off to get back to the beginning. But that greenhouse is a really wonderful spot that we have used for a lot of fun events and festivals and pop-up sales. We have one coming up next weekend, vintage pop-up sale, and it's a really fun place, and we even grow plants in there. So I think at the end, Squash Blossom Farm, and here's another one that moved in, but local music. We don't really call ourselves a hobby farm because it's way more work than a hobby, and it's way more commitment. So we came up with a name. We call ourselves an artisan farm because we're doing artisan food and artists and music. And so if you call us an artisan farm, that'll make us really happy. So I want to just thank you all for coming. And if you have any questions, I'll have Raj come up to you. You might have some questions that he'd be able to answer. He is really the key person regarding bread, building projects, all the technical stuff, mead, chocolate, and I'm kind of the animal and garden and events person. So thank you. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand, and if you are interested in books, I have the books. I'm charging $28 plus tax, which makes them $30.06, but we're running it up to 30. That just kind of covers the cost. If they end up getting sold at places, they'll probably be more than that, you know, retail places, because I can't sell them to them for less than I have it to them. But I'm just happy to make back the cost on them right now and share them with you guys. Yes? Mhm. Oh, the food forest. Did you help do the food forest? Oh, okay. So we last year, the power company, People's Co-op, took down hundreds of trees along our stretch of our north edge of our property. And it was kind of overgrown. It looks pretty nice now, despite it being really shocking and alarming that they were doing that. But we decided to take the advantage of all those old ashes and elms and black walnuts and things coming down and brush to put in a food forest. So we planted probably 100 native food plants like hazelnuts, service berries, June berries and service berries are the same thing. Service berries, elderberries, just the native things that provide food. Wild plums, crabapple, and they all except two look like they survived, and they're all leaping out too, and got maybe eaten up by rabbits, maybe they'll come back. So it's pretty exciting that they're still small. They were just little twigs, you know, but they've grown a lot already. Yeah. For pizza, you mean?
Or anything.
Oh.
Or whatever you have to.
For pizza nights, we have online ordering, and it usually does, we have a limited amount of cars, and parking is our biggest constraint. So we can only fit 55 cars. So we limit the pizza, and people order it ahead. You don't order your flavor, you just order it, and you can choose when you get there. So they usually sell out about, 6 or 7 days ahead. So yeah, it's a good idea.
So when you have festivals and events like that, you have to.
No, you can just, we come and go. We've opened up our lower pasture for that, and people don't stay as long or come all at the same time. So it's worked out so far. I mean, we'll see. It could be a problem, but hasn't been a problem so far. Yes,
Do you enter any of your products in competitions of any kind, like the chocolate and the mead?
we haven't yet. I think we should, but we still kind of think of ourselves as beginners at it. Roger's just in year 2 of making commercial batches of meat, so I think some of them are worth it, but we have such small amounts, we're not doing huge amounts yet either. Yeah, down the road we will, I think. Yes, Chris?
If you are not a regular Facebooker, what is the best way to get a listing of the events that are going to be happening, say, a month or so?
I'm
Having those.
Yeah, I've been taking names for one, but I haven't had a chance to get my act together and send one out yet. We do have a website that all the events are listed on, and a few of them are up now, but in the next week or so, we'll get all the pizza nights up there. So that's the alternative way to Facebook. Sorry, that's, we don't do much advertising other than at the farmers market, because we haven't really had to, because everything's sold out, so why do it? So it's kind of a secret in a way, to people who are in that realm of like that kind of thing.
Do you take reservations at the farm market?
No, but you could go right on your phone and make one right then and there if you were there. I think Tracy tells people that a lot, and people do.
It's good, if you don't have a phone, we'll take your reservation. We'll get you in right there. Yep.
And we're now open on Saturday afternoons from 2 to 6 in the mead tasting room, and you don't need a reservation for that. And we had a chef last year. He was really awesome, but he's starting his own business this year. So we will be making food, but it will be very modest and small, like little charcuterie trays, and maybe a couple of salads. But so there will be some food, but the meat is really good, and it's just a nice place to sit and relax. And I'm just building a beautiful shaded outdoor deck area this year. on the south side of the barn, so. You can sit near the fish and in the shade and be outside. Yep. Yeah,
No reservation.
no reservation. Yeah.
Susan, how
Yes.
many young and middle-aged farmers do you think you and Roger have inspired?
I don't know, but a lot of our interns and staff have, had an interest in farming, and some of them have gone on to do it and are still planning to go on and do it. So yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of people are kind of inspired. They walk up the driveway. It's really pretty in the summer. It's all lined with flowers and it's really pretty. They go, "Oh, you're living my dream." Well, they don't really have a clue how hard that dream is, but it's worth it. So, I would encourage anyone to do it, even on a smaller scale, because I've never been so happy since we moved to the farm and started undertaking all these crazy projects, and I just feel so blessed to have the opportunity in my life to pursue these adventures, and it's been really fun.
On Facebook, I'll see you before your Saturday, called market, the farmer's
Uh-huh.
market. I'll see a wonderful variety of baked goods and breads. How many people would put together, how many people would you need to do a farmer's market?
So Raj does all the sourdough. Sometimes Olivia does part of the sourdough. She'll come in a day. The sourdough is like a 3-day process. Olivia works all day Thursday and all day Friday with me. And then we've had another intern working on baking on Thursday afternoons and Fridays. We'll see this year if we have somebody to do that with us. And then Olivia works a couple long days and I work a really, really long day on Friday. After you get it all baked, you have to pack it all up and load your car, and then you get up. Like a lot of times we'll be baking till 1 and then get up at 5 to go to the market. And then the darn stuff sells out by 10 and you have to stay there till noon before you can go home and take a nap. Well, now we have the meatery, so we don't have to take a nap anymore, but we used to come home and take a nap in the habit before we unload it.
Are there, like, you are such a whimsical, imaginative dreamer. Are there things that you would still like to do on the farm?
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking like you built that beautiful glass
Oh, the glass house.
structure, right? And
That still has a lot of work to be done on it, and like it's gonna get mosaiced around the bottom and painted, and the whole sculpture garden, I want to bring in some really good artists to do sculptures. So it's not just my work, and then I want to have time to make some art and do sculptures too. But I'm always distracted by all the day-to-day stuff that I don't have a lot of time for. So that's the main thing, is I want to do some art, and I have a lot of projects in mind for that. I want to expand the gardens, the fruit trees, the orchard parts. I'm still working on Raj that we should have a peacock. Things like that. Yes, Carol.
I was a forager on Tuesday and got a lovely assortment of baked goods. How, are you planning to keep that through the summer, that arrangement with them?
I don't know if we can do that, because that's a whole day of my life every week, and in the summer, I don't know if I can afford that.
Susan, tell people what
So
that is.
if you've been to Forager Brewery, we just started a partnership with them, and on Mondays I bake and then deliver first thing in the morning, Tuesday, a bunch of baked goods to them, and then, they sell coffee and breakfast and stuff. So, and then Lori Fan does baking for them on Friday. It's been really fun to do it, but I don't think we're gonna do it over the summer. Maybe we can gear up again in the fall, winter, summer season ends. It's nice to have a little bit of outlet and income coming in, but sometimes you just have to say no. I'm learning that in my old age. Yes,
So every time you say no to something, Susan, you get to say yes to something else.
yeah, it's just
I
like,
learned that yesterday.
it's just like going to the
Yeah.
I'm not gonna get that, but I am gonna get that.
The best wedding I ever went to was at your farm, Isaac Elker and Tori Elker's wedding, remember that?
Yes.
Now they're famous musicians in Minneapolis who tour the country. They got married in your backyard. So can you talk a little about the radio? Because at one point you were doing radio interviews like 10 or 12 years ago for pop radio. And now are you ready to talk about that new project with radio?
Well, that radio project that I did a show called Prairie Air, interviewing farmers and artists. It was so much fun because I could ask people nosy questions and they would answer them, and it was just a blast. I really want to do that. That's one of the things I want to do, but it will probably be like a podcast, but it probably won't be for another year. But we're thinking one of the projects we wanted this summer, we're doing a few new things. We have a drama camp for young kids that Susie Olson will be doing. So if you know any kids who are like grade school age, just a week for a couple hours a day. And then there'll be a performance. She wrote a play called Life on the Farm, It's a Laid Back, and it stars Roger and me. Kids have to play us and all of our animals. It's very funny. But she's also going to teach a class, a storytelling class, and then students will hone a story, and we'll be doing, we wanted to launch a kind of, if you've ever listened to the Moth Radio on public radio, like something like that. I don't know if someday we can become a Moth affiliate. I don't know. We're just going to make a rip-off butterfly radio show. Oh, we do have a fairy garden. Because somebody asked. We have a fairy garden in the woods down by the pond, and it's always kind of evolving, and sometimes it's a little neglected, but it's really fun because a lot of kids who come for pizza regularly, that's the first place they go to see if there's any new fairies or what the fairies are doing. I'm hoping to spend more time on that too. Anything else? Any questions for Raj? He is like the best partner. I'm the luckiest person. He made all my farming dreams come true. Okay.
Well, on that happy note, I would like to thank Susan and Roger for coming and bringing all the snacks and goodies. It's been great. So thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. Thanks.
Bye.